Welcome back to the Wolff Den presented by Win Again Academy. I'm Matt Wolff, founder and CEO of Ticket Time Machine today. And I always forget to ask because I know I've done it wrong before, but today we have Todd Grasley on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for
Grasley,
having me. It's Grasley, but either way works. And thanks so much for having me, Matt. Big fan of what you do. And that intro music had me dancing and even more fired up than I am on this Wednesday.
I do like it. I got to change it. I need to maybe change the music a little bit, but I do like it. I got to get an outro too. Right now, we just end it. But for the people who don't know who you are, give a quick intro and then let's get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. My background is in broadcast journalism, and I do a lot of PR and media work, consulting, as well as helping individuals and businesses really hype their brand, get their story out there, and get that media attention they deserve.
So I met you in a few different places, sort of all coinciding at the same, but it was I think Mark Moyer's calls with the Win Again Academy. He was a good partner of the program, and Tim Claiborne's calls, and then met you at the Super Bowl with the work that you do for FNN. How did you get into all of this? And you're everywhere the same way I'm everywhere, which is good, especially from a PR and communications standpoint. How'd you get into all this?
Yeah, no, it's they're definitely good circles to be in and great people. And, like you, I'm a big fan of networking and building relationships and just getting to meet people. And, for me, it all started back in college. I went to University of Central Florida, majored in broadcast journalism, spent the next 2 years at the NBC in Orlando covering high school sports. And I always thought I wanted to be a sports anchor. And that time came and I went to Panama City, Florida, and it was about 7 hours from Orlando, where I'm from, and different time zone. And, I had just gotten engaged. And to be totally honest, it was a whole new world. I got eaten alive. There was a foot teleprompter. There was, services that you had to get the feeds from. It wasn't just simply going out and telling a story. And, I realized there that, it's not about the Todd Grasley story. It's about everybody else's story. And I think that's really what drove me to continue to do what I do now is, just tell the stories of these businesses, these individuals, these athletes, these brands, whatever that looks like. If it's, writing a story for Florida National News, or it's, doing social media for a brand, or it's getting TV placements. At the end of the day, that's what gets me fired up. And, I spent 8 years covering track and field and the Florida community, and just getting to know these kids and these athletes, and, the smile on their faces when you would do an interview with them for the first time. And, it's so cool to see an athlete that you covered in high school that goes on to the Olympics, that goes on to run in college. And, one of my favorite stories might even be about a kid that nobody knew about. And, it was a high school kid, went to a school in South Florida, and his coach said, hey, he has had no scholarship offers, but he wants to run at the next level. Can you interview him? And so we did about a 20-30-minute interview. And the coach called me back in about 2 months and said, hey, I don't know if what you did helped, but my kid got a scholarship to a smaller school. And that's what it's all about is, we live in a world where everybody thinks it's me. But to me, it's how can I help provide value, whether it's making an introduction or getting you a placement here or connecting dots somewhere. That's really what gets me fired up.
But some of that is, I feel the same way. We talk about The Go-Giver and a book that Bob Berg co-wrote all the time. Great book. And networking, trying to help add value. Some of it is done because that's what you like to do. And some of it is done because that's your job and you get paid to do it. So there is a fine line between that, where I'll help anyone I can. I'll give you my ear and some time to talk about what it is. But then some of it is going to be like, hey, we got to figure out a way to monetize it, because that's what we do, especially when you're consulting, as opposed to I'm just an arm of a bigger firm that's trying to help do this.
Yeah, and I think there's that balance. I'm a big believer in, your vibe surrounds your tribe, right? I want to surround myself with good people who are doing good work, and I truly believe that out of that, good things will happen. And there's projects that are on the lower spectrum of the pay range, and there's projects that are on the broader spectrum. And then, there's clients and people that I help just because I want to see them grow, because I'm passionate about what they're doing. There's people I work with who could sell butterfly gardens or wildflowers or daisies off the side of the road, but I believe in them and they're good people, and I'm going to give them the time. So, Dave Meltzer is a guy that I follow a lot. I watch a lot of his videos. I steal a lot of his quotes. And I think, he always talks about, hey, how can I provide value? Sometimes I go on calls and people are like, what do you charge for your services? And I'm like, listen, like, I want to just get to know you, get to know your story, and see how we can connect some dots. And then we can go from there.
Well, I get that. But I also, on the other side, people want to have an idea of what something is going to cost them, because either A, they don't see the value in spending that much money on something. They don't have the budget for it. I'm, being a small business owner, I'm in that. So really, yeah, I get hit up from a lot of people who want to help me. But what does that help look like? Is it going to be $3,000 a month? Because I don't have $3,000 a month to give to someone. And frankly, I don't know that I would give it to someone who just randomly reached out to me on LinkedIn, who probably reached out to 100 people. I'd try and find it through my connections and through someone. So it's a tough road to navigate through.
Yeah, and I think that's where you find that balance. I think it's, being genuine and authentic, and listen, the prices vary on whether you use a large PR agency or a smaller one, or you're doing social media and PR, or what that looks like. The pricing varies, and I think being upfront and honest and saying, hey, this is what my services are, and this is how I'm going to provide value to your business. I think Chris from Dugout Mugs, who was one of our clients, says, be unapologetically authentic, be yourself. And you know what, like, you're gonna get some people that love you and believe in you and love what you're doing and see value in your services. And there's gonna be people who don't get it and don't see the value. And I think, there's no harm and no foul. And, you align yourself with those people who believe in you and want to see you succeed, and you want them to succeed.
Yeah, it's just more about the people who ask about it up front. Like, if I ask you about the cost, you should say something about the cost. If you come to me and say something about, well, the value in this, you've already lost me half the way. And I don't, I've been in sales long enough, and the people say, well, don't sell on cost. You know what? Sometimes you have to sell on cost. That's just the reality of it. You have to be able to adapt. And I don't think you should lead with cost. Definitely value is what you want to talk about, but sometimes people need to know. And if they're asking you and you don't give them the answer and it's a runaround and everything's custom, I just think that's, you could lose people quickly there.
And to follow up on that, usually what I do is I'll have an intro call with a prospective client and say, hey, what are your goals and objectives, right? What are the things you want to accomplish? What are the stories you want to tell? Is it through social? Is it through PR? And then off of that, what are the target outlets we want to identify? What do we want to be in? And then what I'll do is I'll create a roadmap and say, hey, look, this is how we're going to get from point A to point B. I want to make sure that we're on the same path, we're aligned, and here's a proposal of what it will cost. And, they can come back and say, hey, Todd, great. Thanks for the tips. I'm going to go take your roadmap and I'm going to drive my car and I'm going to do it myself. Or they'll come back and say, hey, Todd, that amount sounds great. Let's do it. Or they'll say, hey, Todd, let's meet in the middle. That amount doesn't sound great. So, I think you have to be upfront about the price. But I also think, providing value at the onset and showing them that you're genuinely interested and you're not just trying to collect a paycheck also pays dividends as well.
But there's also value to that, because they could take the roadmap and decide they want to drive it themselves, and they can get a mile down the road and figure out it's probably better off if someone else does this. So that, that's definitely something that I think is not as many people do. But I think that's something that more people should do.
And I think a lot of people look at, marketing in general and say, oh, I can go do that myself. I can make a social post with a photo, or I can reach out to ABC, or I can reach out to Fox News, or whatever that is, or a small podcast. And yes, you can. A lot of those email addresses are out there. but what is that story that you're going to pitch to them? What are those themes you're going to post on social media? What is that copy you're going to write? What are those relationships you have with those outlets? Are the things that you can't teach. You can write whatever, you can find that email address, but you have to stand apart. And I think, people see that. You see a lot of small businesses where they're like, hey, we're going to run our own social media. We're going to do our own PR. And, how far does that get you? Sometimes it's successful and sometimes it's not.
PR, marketing, advertising, it's all connected in a way. There's overlap. But what do those mean to you individually?
Yeah, I think, at the core of everything, the first question I always ask is, what is the story you want to tell? And, I think marketing is the overall strategy of how you build your brand. And I think in that is, there's advertising, what digital ads are we going to run? Not my wheelhouse. Social media, what platforms are we going to post? What's the copy we're going to post? What's the cadence we're going to post? What's the messaging? PR, what is that story we want to get out, and what media outlets do we want to get it out to? Social media, we're getting it out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, etc. But on the PR side, do we want to be in, Tampa Bay Business Journal? Do we want to be on, ABC in West Palm Beach? What does that look like? Do we want to be in a sleep magazine? Do we want to be in a hockey publication? Dugout Mugs was great because they had a great story that could go to any baseball market in America. It could go to business outlets. So, going off of that, to me, it all comes down to what is the story we want to tell. And I think that's kind of where I pivot and build that roadmap for those clients and provide value.
When we talk about PR, I mean, everyone has a story to tell, and the story's out there, but the story could be interpreted in different ways depending on who's going. So that's almost where like the PR comes in, and like, there's bad PR. Is all PR good PR? Is there such a thing as bad PR? Trying to get in front of things if there's an issue. Just really trying to get your brand out there and getting it known. I talk a lot about the importance of who knows you, not who you know and who do they know, which is very important, but who knows you when you don't even know them. And, I got a lot of, yesterday was my birthday, and I
wish you a happy birthday. I was on there.
Yeah. Got a lot of random messages from people wishing me a happy birthday, but also within those messages said, hey, I thought about you because I was at this event and there was no ticket, or they gave me this commemorative ticket or whatever. And that really speaks to the who knows you, because I would have no idea how many people in my Facebook world actually know what I do. I post a lot about it, but do they actually know? Have they seen it? Do they understand? So to get those sort of messages are to validate that there's a lot of people out there who know who you are and what you do, even if they don't talk to you or communicate with you, that they do know that. And that's sort of the power of branding and PR, marketing, whatever you want to talk about. I don't spend $1 on any of it.
And I think one thing that you do well and others do well is be consistent, right? And even on my personal brand, that's something that I need to do more of, because I'm worried about, all the different clients and all the different people I'm working with. But consistency, right? Whether it's, consistent storylines and angles to keep yourself newsworthy, or consistent posts and update. Because listen, we might be friends with lots and lots of people, or connected, as they say, and we might not have time to talk with all of them. I mean, you're married, I'm married, I have 2 little kids. I'm connecting with people constantly and following people's journey. And I think like that's the key, is to consistently post so that people can follow what you're doing, because you never know who is watching, who is following, who wants to connect, who may not have had the time. And I think, as weird as it sounds, like birthdays are great. Like people always reach out on your birthday and they're like, oh, hey, Matt, good to see you're doing this, or haven't talked to you in forever. Great. Happy birthday. It's the same with on LinkedIn when people get promotions, congratulations on the new gig. Would love to see what you're working on and how I can help, things like that. But it all comes down to, PR is what you make of it, right? And the minute something bad happens, everybody knows about it. So why not continually create good PR be a positive person, provide thought leadership, provide updates in your business, reach out to teammates, positivity, like your shout outs you give on LinkedIn and on Facebook, like that stuff resonates with people. And I think it goes a long way. I've been to charity events where, no media has come out and these athletes are doing great work. And then, something bad happens, a month or 2 months later, and it's all over TMZ and all the news outlets.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that newspapers and media outlets want to see. But there's a ton of good going on in this world. Why not promote it and why not tell those stories?
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason why the Wolff Den is here. It's to help share the stories of people who, some some you don't, but it's a side of the people that you might not have gotten to hear about, which is a lot of good. I mean, so many good stories. And even the most popular people in the world that everyone knows about has a story that they haven't shared that I would hope to get if they were joining the show, or if they don't want to join the show, that's fine. I mean, there's plenty of people that you've never heard of who have remarkable stories of inspiration and things to, to celebrate, and things that make you think, and things that educate you, and then stuff to laugh, right? We got comedians, and there's so many stories. That's what life is about, the stories that we can tell, the memories that we can create.
And I think that's one of the keys, to PR for me is I always go into things looking at what is the story. Like I've said, Parts Pass, it's an automotive app, but the founder of the company, emigrated with his family and got in the auto industry. Like Stan, incredible story. I've got my buddy's dugout mugs over here, right? Like Chris and Randall, incredible story. Randall, former baseball player, his baseball dream gets short. He creates a dugout mug in an 8-figure company, right? Like
Randall was an early guest on the Wolff Den, but move your head down like this and that way, other way, so we can see the Parts Pass. You're wearing the hat. We want to get the Parts Pass
right
in there.
So I think, everybody has an incredible story. I have an NIL client, they wrote a book, NIL for All. Mark's the parent of 4 Division I athletes. He was a former Division I athlete. He wants to educate, these student athletes on NIL, like just incredible story. Like Saki is another one, is another one of the clients, right? Saki has their missions. It's a hockey stick cover, but their mission is that hockey is for everyone, right? And they have an after school hockey Saki program with preschoolers to middle school kids, giving back and providing, a platform for these kids. Like just incredible stories. Like I'm not selling a hockey cover. I'm not selling a dugout mug. I'm selling their story. Like, Mummy sleep pillows, right? Founded by a guy, Joe Castagnani, who was a former Cal football player, wanted to go to the business school and was not sleeping. And he had a psychology class and a professor that really touched him and, created this 6-chamber pillow that, Brandy Chastain, Ronnie Lott, Bobby Okereke, who just signed a big deal with the Giants. They're all investors. Like crazy stories. Like how do these athletes, why do they want to invest in a pillow company, right? Like so many cool stories. And you can tell, like, it gets me fired up just thinking about, in general, like I love just connecting with people and learning their stories and learning more about them.
Well, you're a clear example of selling yourself. People are buying into you in a way, sort of buying into me. I'm sort of selling myself. You have to have the product or the service to back it, and that's fine. But it's more about believing in this person and what they're doing, whether it's the Wolff Den or, Ticket Time Machine. We talk a lot about that with charity too. Like when people are raising money for charity, they're giving money because of the person who's presenting this, and they trust them that they're going to be aligned to the right people. And sometimes you align with the wrong people, and that's not good. But you stand up there and you say, hey, I made a mistake. It was my fault. It wasn't the right person.
And I 100% agree with that. And I think, there's been clients and times where, listen, and this is a knock on me, but I don't have a Todd Grasley media website yet. Nobody steal that because I'm working on it, right? I don't have 1,000 posts on Instagram. And part of the reason that I genuinely believe people work with me is, yes, I have, samples of work I've done and people and clients I've worked with. But the other part is, like, I'm passionate. Like, you can hire a PR company or a social media company, 7,500, 10 grand, whatever that looks like. And you're just client number 15 on their roster. But, I'm going to track meets and I'm giving away NIL for all books, and announcing it when I'm announcing the track meet. I'm, talking about sleep segments and pillows, when people are like, oh, I need a good pillow. Like, I'm living it. I'm breathing it. I'm preaching the gospel, is Mark, who wrote this book, would say. And I think you can't teach that. You can't teach passion. You can't teach excitement. You can't teach energy. And I think you can't teach good vibes and positivity, as corny as it sounds. And I linked you up with somebody the other day, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work, but I didn't have to do that. But I was like, oh, this is somebody in the ticketing field. I think this would be a great connection for Matt. Let me link you to. And I think just that vibes surrounds your tribe, or vibe attracts your tribe. I think it goes a long way and it resonates with people.
Yeah, I think, look, people want to help other people who they know want to help also. So I feel that way. And I send stuff to help people all the time. I did stuff today. And I even help the people who don't want to help me if I can, just because I think it's the right thing to do. It doesn't cost me anything. And, it's a little disappointing at the response you get from certain people. I argue this with my sister and people all the time. I'll never be okay with it, but I understand that that's how the world works. And, someday I will be in a much higher platform and bigger than I am today. And I won't have to worry about that. But for now I do. And so, you being an independent person who has to do that, what do you say to someone who has the skills that you have, who wants to do it on their own, and they're kind of afraid to do it?
Yeah, I think every day
they're stuck in a big firm and they're not happy about it, and they're not reaping the benefits of the work that they're doing. What would you tell them?
Yeah, I think, first of all, it's not easy, and every day is a hustle and a grind. And I think, to me, first and foremost, do something that you're passionate about and where you make a difference. I did some content writing for a finance company, and I hated it. I would literally look at my watch every day and pray that it was 4:00. We had a trail nearby. I'd go walk on it to get out for 20 or 30 minutes. 2:00 on Wednesdays, I'd call my buddy Chris, who had an ESPN radio show, and I'd call in for 15 minutes. I'd go to the hotel next door and sit by the fire pit and daydream about doing something else. And COVID hit in 2020, and I was on a call, and they're like, "Hey, if you're on this call, you guys all just got fired." And I think everybody got upset, and I probably cheered. So at the end of the day, it's do what you want. And, obviously you have to make it work financially, but, I'm a huge believer in everything happens for a reason. And especially in this marketing and PR and social media industry, yes, it takes time. Yes, you have to, build yourself up, as with anything, but there's a lot of, small businesses that'll pay $500 to help you run their social media. I mean, you get 8 of those, that's $4,000 a month. You get 4 that pay you $1,000 a month. That's $4,000 a month. You're making $48,000 a year. So, it's attainable. And I think, with everything in life, it's how hungry are you and how much do you want it? Are you willing to make $2,500 a month and test the waters, and maybe you make $8,000? I remember, talking to somebody, he had a big company, he had a house in California, he had a house in Argentina. And I said to him, and it was right around 2020. And I said, Brett, man, I'm just looking for something that pays me like $4,000 a month. And he's like, Todd, why give yourself a number? Why set yourself at $4,000 a month? I'm like, well, that's good. We go out to eat, that's $48,000. That's great. And he's like, that's you charging somebody $1,000 a month. Why not charge $2,000 a month and get 4 clients and make $8,000? And Gary Vee says this all the time. I watch his videos too. Don't give yourself a number. Don't give yourself a goal of, I want 3 or 4 clients. Go and get as many as you can. Do the best job you can and build it up. And you know what? Some months you might make 3,000. Some months you might make 8,000. Clients are going to come and go. And I think the other thing I've learned in this business, that a friend of mine who's got a wealth of experience, who's a mentor, he tells me, Todd, you got to have thick skin, because you never know. In this freelance world, you're not getting a check for $4,000 every month. You're not getting paid on the 1st of every month.
Yeah.
You might get paid the 15th. You might get paid the 31st. You might not get paid for 2 months, right? So, and a client might say tomorrow, we don't have a PR budget, or Todd, you did a great job. We've got all these placements. We don't need PR anymore, or, hey, I had a client, we were working together for 8 months and they just stopped social media. They haven't posted on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter in 8 months since November. So, it's a game where you're constantly hustling. How can I keep providing value? How can I keep getting paid? How can I keep the wheels going? How can I get more clients on board and not quantity, but quality, and provide value?
Yeah. I think as long as you're in communication, I don't care when you pay. I really don't. I feel like I trust you that you'll pay when you can, be in communication. When I send you an invoice or a follow-up to it, just let me know, hey, I'm working on it. We want to wait for the next credit card bill, whatever that reason may be. There's just too much and it's hard. You have to be able to go a couple months without making a penny. And
it's a fine line, right? You don't want to be bothersome and say, where's my check every week? But at the same time, and different people have different circumstances, but you have to pay bills. Maybe you have a wife, maybe you have kids, maybe you have a pet, right? Whatever that looks like, maybe you have tax payments you got to make quarterly. But you're right. I think, for anybody in the freelance world, set those expectations. Is it going to be the 1st of the month? Is it a monthly retainer? Is it a monthly stipend? What does that look like? And then, don't be afraid to follow up, but also, if it doesn't come on the 1st of the month, be prepared that it's not going to put you out either. So, and that's something that I've dealt with. That's something that friends and colleagues of mine have dealt with. It's something that we're going to continue to deal with. But I think as long as you have a reasonable expectation of, oh, hey, we're running behind, plan on it coming the 15th, I think then you can prepare and make yourself in that financial position.
Yeah. You're a go-getter. You're a hustler. And you do the FNN stuff, the reporting, which you have some background in, but talk a little bit about the process of trying to get attention, because you've earned your way in there, right? You're in the media room at Super Bowl, but no offense to you, nobody wants to talk to Todd. They're going to want to talk to 15 other high, television and radio and media, but you have to get yourself in there. So how does that, how has your experience helped you to do that? And then how does that help you when you're networking and when you're in a room, sort of get the attention of some other people on the PR side?
Yeah, I think, it all comes down to networking, right? I think, Florida National News is an outlet that I cover the Buccaneers for. I've done some writing for Fubo TV, Orlando Magazine. I write for a track and field outlet called DieStat and Runner Space. So I think for me, one of the keys in media in general, and I'll go back to my broadcast journalism and UCF days, don't be one dimensional, right? And I fell kind of in the crack of, I don't want to cover news. I don't want to go to a murder scene. I don't care. It's depressing. I don't want to be in that world. And, that limited me with sports opportunities, right? Everybody wants to do sports. It's fun. It's creative. So I think, being as versatile as you can, being able to do social media, being able to do marketing in general, being able to do PR in general, and then networking. Like, I think building relationships is key in any industry. And I think, I established myself. I'll use Florida National News as an example. We only had, one credential to start with. And, they're like, Todd, we need you to go to practices. We need you to go to community events. We need you to be there so that they know that Florida National News is covering these events and in person and on the ground. And, you're not just getting a free meal ticket. And I did that, and they took notice. And there were a couple of games where we got turned down, and there were a couple of games where we got approved. And then the second season, I think the first season I went to 1 or 2 games. The second season, I covered, I don't know, 6 of 8 or whatever that number is, but a majority. And I think people are like, oh, that's Todd. He's from Florida National News. He's working with these guys. We had a videographer. And, the more you establish yourself, the more you have a presence and a daily presence, I think people respect that, and your outlet becomes more respectable. And, usually we had in the past, I didn't go, but we'd have, 2 people or 3 people at the Super Bowl. This year, we had 3 again. We had Radio Row credentials. In the past, I don't think we had a booth. This year we had a booth to do interviews. So I think the more you can be present, the more you can build the relationships, the more established you'll be. And I think, had we not had a booth to bring athletes over to, people probably wouldn't have come. Had our teammates, Willie, who started the site, and Mike Brodsky, who's covers the Jaguars and is a great friend of both of us, had they not built those relationships with publicists in years past, probably wouldn't have got a dozen of those interviews. I had a good relationship with Dave Meltzer and his team. So Dave came over, and then Bob Parsons, the co-founder GoDaddy, was sitting at the desk, right? We had a good relationship with you. You came over. We brought, we got you a pass. You came hang out for the day and got some interviews and some coverage.
Yeah.
So,
I'm covering an event tonight for FNN, a celebrity charity basketball game here at the Panthers Arena. So,
and that looks to be a great event. And, not to quote, Hamilton the musical, or, show all my cards that I'm a fan of Broadway and sports, but, you want to be in the room where it happened. You want to be in that room, shaking hands, kissing babies. You want to be at the press conferences. You want to be at the events. You want to, we have another mutual friend who, he has his own media company, and he's a young guy, and he's like, Todd, like, you can't just show up and go to the Kentucky Derby. You got to be on the press conferences. You can't just go and show up at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. You got to be on the press list. You got to show up to their Zoom sessions. Like, they might not be the sexiest, but if you want to get there, that's the path you got to take.
Visibility. I mean, that's such a huge thing for me. Even when I was at the Super Bowl, it's like I kept seeing some of the same people at these events, and they're probably thinking, well, who the hell is this guy? Never heard him before. Now he's at the Steinberg party and Radio Row and the Playboy party. And one of the players was
my spot on that one.
Yeah,
I kept my spot on that one.
Kept saying hi. Yeah, that was one. It wasn't the greatest event in the world, but it was just cool. And that's one of those things. Like I think I even told you, like, you should have been there. And I encourage you. The other day or last month with the World Baseball Classic, like, your thing, should I? I'm like, yeah, of course you should come down. Whatever it is, you should come down. You should be there. These are moments that the access that you might be able to have. Who knows if you'll ever get to do it. And it wasn't a big deal. They actually bring people on who didn't even know about it that day to say, hey, do you want to hold the flag? But it's right place, right time, timing, whatever that might be. It just happened to all align for you, and you were able to bring your son too, which is
that's a great that's a great story. And one thing that recently, and to be quite frank, that I've learned is to be spontaneous, right? I've always been we'll go on vacation and I'll say, all right, well, I'll circle the planner and say at 9 o'clock we got this, at 1 o'clock we got this, at 3 o'clock we got this, and
I'm a planner too. I plan. Believe me, my friends will tell you. I plan, and it's not easy to just be spontaneous. But I also have learned that I need to do that to be able to not miss out. And that's when I joke around with you about being high maintenance. Like that's what I talk about, having to know. I'm like, dude, just show up, trust that I'm gonna take care of you.
Yeah, and so for those that don't know, I have a 9-year-old son. He loves baseball. And Matt and I had been going back and forth about the World Baseball Classic. He's a big Ohtani fan, loves Trout. They were playing Japan versus USA. And, it was 10:30. And I was like, Matt, are you going? Are you going? He's like, I don't know, Todd. I don't know. 10:45, he pings me and you say, hey, I got this opportunity where you can carry the flag on the field. And I'm having this major anxiety attack. I'm like, I don't know if I want to drive. Like, it's a long way. Where am I going to
4 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm asking 150 questions. Matt, can I ride with you? You're thinking in the back of your head, like, God, Todd, like, I wish I didn't even tell you about this. So I go and I text my wife and I'm like, hey, she's a teacher. And I'm like, going to pick up Gavin in 15 minutes. We're going to the World Baseball Classic. And I get there and I tell him, and I'm freaking out the whole way down there. And it was one of the most incredible moments that I still talk about today. We met up with Matt. We got the flag. We brought out the World Baseball Classic flag onto the field. We waved the USA flag during the national anthem. The players were walking, 50 feet away. We could have thrown a baseball. And it just put life in perspective, that it's like, you know what? Sometimes you just got to grab life by the horns and just go with it, right? Like, what's the worst that can happen?
Say yes and see what happens. It reminds me of one of my favorite movies of all time, Good Will Hunting, where Robin Williams says, I went to see about a girl. And we don't regret the things that we miss because we did something that we wanted to do. And this would have been the other way around. Like, I don't want to regret that I didn't go to this thing when I could have. So I always
still talk about it to this day. I mean, I'm constantly showing people pictures of how cool this is and how we were on the field. And yeah, what a special moment that I think we're both going to remember forever. But had we just said, it's a 4-hour drive, we wouldn't have got to do it.
I remember, going to some games with my dad, some that were pretty memorable. Him and I went to my first Broncos game, it was in Philly. And, man, the Broncos lost 30-0. It was terrible, but I just remember that day was such a great day. And so, being able to share that with your friends and your family, sons, father, whoever, aunts, uncles. I've been to some games with my nephew and my nieces, and it's been great just to enjoy. Someone posted the other day about she went to Taylor Swift concert and how awesome the show was. But what was even better is just watching the show through the eyes of their daughter. Like, when you can see the excitement of someone, even I get that even when I'm watching other people's kids that I don't even know. I don't even know these people, but I'm watching them at a concert. It could be adults dancing around, or it could be a kid who's just, and you're thinking that's probably their first show, or they don't really even know who this person is. But man, they're having a great time, and they're probably not going to forget this.
And that's I think you have cats. You don't have kids, yeah. But I mean, that's what it's all about. Whether it's going to Disney and Gavin and Lila, who's 5, getting on their first ride for the first time, or going to the Threshers game, the Phillies minor league team, and we brought some friends, and they had kids, and they're getting baseballs and they're getting autographs, and I'm like, I couldn't even tell you. I think they won like 8-3, but I couldn't really tell you the details of the game. But I can tell you that each little kid got 2 baseballs with a dozen autographs. Gavin did a contest in the 3rd inning, and won a $10 gift card to a pizza place. Like, that's the memories that will stick with me.
That's the beauty of the kids. They go to a Bananas game, they go to a minor league game. Nobody knows who these people are, and they don't. Even they go to a program, they don't know who these guys are. It could be the most famous person, or a guy who just sits on the bench and never goes, but they just love to talk to them and get an autograph. And I think that fuels the players too. Just see that is the purity of the game, and the love for being at an event. And what it means to people. And that's why they do that. That's why the player will stay there the extra hour and sign the autographs. Sure, there's people who want to get autographs and resell them, and but the majority of people are there for the right reasons, I think, and it's the beauty of sports.
No, I love it. It is a beautiful thing, and to see, those athletes see the joy. I mean, Gavin, my son, is relentless. I'm looking up the outfielders, the right fielders' names, and he's like, Ricones, Mister, Bishop, can you throw me a ball? Can you throw me a ball? And they're probably thinking, how does these kids know my name? But they're throwing them a ball, and it's exciting, and it's great when the athletes have as much passion and see that joy as much as the parents and the fans.
You're in Tampa now. You're a Bucks fan, but also being able to cover the Bucks. But if you do some coverage on teams that you don't necessarily like or players that you don't like, do you find that difficult to do, or do you kind of shy away from it? I've learned that you sort of kind of have to do it, but if I can avoid it, I'll avoid it, just to not have to speak praise upon a team I don't like or a player. I mean, I just have that. That's just me in 40-something years of growing up a sports fan.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't think, maybe I'm in the minority. There isn't really teams or athletes that I dislike, right? And at the end of the day, like, everybody has a story, like I've said, numerous times. And I think, sharing that story with the audience, because who knows, they might be Bucks fans. I might be in the Saints locker room and interviewing those guys, and they might be Saints fans, right? So, I try to mix it up. Usually, the Buccaneers locker room is better and more joyful when they win. And sometimes I'll go to the other teams' locker rooms when they win, just to mix it up and get a different feel and get their take, and see athletes who you don't normally get to see on a weekly basis.
Yeah. Give me the name of a brand or company that is doing great stuff PR wise, and one that's not doing so well that could use some Todd.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think my hat over here is the Savannah Bananas, and I think those guys, Jesse Cole, what he's doing, I'm a big fan of their product, but also what they're doing. And the funny thing is they're doing everything organically, right? The viral TikTok videos, selling out stadiums, creating this buzz and attention with Banana Ball and the Banana Land series on ESPN. And yeah, I got one of those over yonder. I got my own VIB that you gave me. I think they're doing a great job, and I think they get it. I think any brand, I'm sure there's a ton of brands out there that need a Todd, right? None come to mind that are doing terrible PR or marketing or that type of thing. But I think, I think the ones that are doing it right are the ones who understand what it brings in terms of value. And I think the hard part with marketing is, there's a lot of KPIs and key performance indicators, and how do we measure this and how do we measure that? It's hard with social media, right? If we post 1,000 times, are we going to get 1,000 sales? Probably not. If we get featured on Forbes, are we going to sell 5,000 dugout mugs? I don't know. But
somebody like the pay to play kind of thing now. It's
right. And I was just having that talk with somebody else, who's in the industry, who's more on the journalist side. And she's like, and I was asking her about Father's Day segments, and she's like, oh, well, I might do some sponsored segments, but they're all, pay to play. And
there's value to that, though. Let's talk about that. There's value to pay to play. I'm not a big fan, but I understand that there's sometimes that there's value to it, in the same way that there's value to people can buy followers. And, I talk about this all the time. Again, the average consumer is not educated, so they might not know that this person has 15,000 followers because they paid for most of them.
That's 100% true. And I think with the followers, you can also look at, what's the engagement, right? Are they getting 5,000 likes on every post, right? You go to the Bananas, for example, they're getting, thousands and thousands of likes on their posts on Instagram and TikTok and those things. But I think, when you talk about pay to play, I think it's an edgy topic, right? Because, a lot of PR agencies are getting paid to, or, whether that's a PR consultant or a PR manager or freelance PR person, or, whatever that looks like, they're getting paid to get those placements. So when I look at it with a client, I look at, hey, you're paying me. I'm going to try, and maybe it's the cheapness in me, but I'm going to try and get as much earned media as we can. I'm not selling a product. I'm not trying to buy an advertisement. I'm pitching a story just like a journalist would pitch a story.
Yeah. And that's the value to coming on something like this where you don't have to pay, and now you got content. You never know who's going to watch it, but you can pour it out to whatever you want. You can do some snippets. So we got a lot of people who pass because of the, we can't bring them a guarantee of the audience. Which, by the way, we're not a podcast yet. We're just a show with 284 episodes of a show that I don't do any push for other than we share episodes that we've done. So there will be a point when we are a podcast.
And I think people look at, to me, obviously you want to be cognizant of people's time, but, I look at it, even opportunities like this, they're great for, building a brand. They're great for breaking it up to social clips. They're great for putting it on a website saying, hey, look, I was featured in this. And you know what? People have to start somewhere. And, if you can say I have 5 podcasts, even if they're small, well, then you can go to a medium-sized podcast and say, hey, look, we were just recently featured on these guys. Would love to join your podcast and share our story. And it's the same
experience being on a pod. Some people have never been on, and they're not great at having, the conversation. That's practice too.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, you gotta earn your stripes. And I think, getting back to the paid media, like there's some instances where, paid media is going to be good. FoxNews.com is doing a Father's Day gift guide and they're picking 12 people, but they want people to pay. Well, your chances of getting on FoxNews.com from an editorial point of view for free is not that good. But if you can get on for $1,000, that's a good fit.
I agree.
Or if you can get, a 30-second Father's Day segment on KTLA, the #1 market in the country, for $1,000, or Good Day Sacramento, a top 50 market, could be worth it. And the other thing is,
but this also trying to draw the line between advertising and a paid advertisement.
Right. I
think advertising, but a paid advertisement could be looked upon if you're not looking closely as someone who advocates for this product or service or whatever.
Yeah. And I think like there's spots where you can buy, 5 minutes on, Tampa Bay's Morning Blend and pay $5,000, and it can be a $5,000 infomercial. Right. But, I think, I'm a big fan. If you're going to pay to play, it's got to be something that at least has an editorial look and feels authentic, right? I see the same, Men's Health Clinic at, 10:55 on the Morning Blend every day, and I'm like, okay, it's, they're pushing it. It's an it's a commercial, right? Like it doesn't have that same effect. So I think
you can tell that the way I can tell it, but again, I think the average consumer,
it's not authentic.
They don't necessarily know that. What I don't like is we go to these conferences and the content there is all pay to play. So it's bad content and it's just, plugging themselves, but also these awards for these these outlets that have awards, and you got to pay $250 to nominate someone. Like, why? You just cut away a ton of people who probably deserve to be nominated. I would love to nominate everyone, but I'm not paying $250 to nominate someone. It's probably not a bad investment. You get this award, or even get nominated for it.
Yeah. And I think like that's another example of, where do we pay to play, right? Like, do we want to be on, the Forbes 40 under 40? Do we want to be on the Inc. 5000? Those things you have to pay money. And, that's kind of the shift that we're seeing. I'm going to try and get as much earned media, as we call it, as possible. But, I'm going to present, paid opportunities too. And let the client decide, hey, do we have the budget to do this? Do we want to do this? If not, no hurt feelings. I'm going to present as many opportunities as I can. And I think that's what a good, publicist, a good PR, consultant or manager should do. And like they're trying to run a business too. I think, dugout mugs, we got Inc. 5000. And they're like, well, if you want to use our logo, it's an extra $250. If you want to, mention our name or, send out the publication, it's an extra whatever. And it's like, really? Like, we just got this award. Like, we want to hype it up. So yeah, it's
them too. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. I'd like to think that with doing the stuff I'm doing, I'll get enough earned everything. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe I should be paying for more of that. But you roll the dice. It's who you are too. It's like, hey, that's not me. It's like having someone else talk about you and they don't really even know. You do like weddings and funerals, and like this person doesn't even know who I am. And they're talking. That's why I let everyone do their own intro. It's right. Weird if I go, hey, Todd is this and he was that. Like, that's better for you to talk about.
It's funny you kind of said that, because I have a client who we posted where we nominated her for an award, and I said to her, I said, hey, like, I don't know some of this stuff. Like, I don't know your greatest achievements or the epiphany you had to start this company. Like, hear the questions, send me your replies, and I'll post them. But that's a great point, because they don't want you nominating yourself these days.
Or you can if you pay the money. So it just depends. You've gotten to go to a lot of cool events based on the stuff that you're doing, whether it's through yourself, the PR, FNN. Give me a Mount Rushmore of the events that you've been to.
Yeah, I mean,
4 greatest events.
Yeah, I think the World Baseball Classic was up there. I think that wasn't covering it, but just as an experience,
as a fan too.
And with my son, I think that was up there. I think going to the Super Bowl, I didn't go to the game, but we went to all the events. Just being in the presence of, not just elite athletes, because that's cool, but I think, broadcasters and celebrities, and, we watched the Super Bowl from a fan party with 15,000 people, on a big screen. Just being in that moment, and probably arguably the biggest sporting event in the world, was awesome. I think being able to cover the Buccaneers, through FNN, Tom Brady,
specific game, yeah.
I think I don't recall what game it was, but a moment that was a touching moment. It wasn't, an epiphany moment. It was a touching moment. Was, the Bucs had lost 4 or 5 in a row. They let you in about 10, 15 minutes after the locker room closes, and they open it up. We go in, and Tom Brady is in his locker with his head in his hands, still wearing his full uniform. Everybody else is naked, running around, coming in and out of the shower. Brady's in his full uniform, has his helmet in his hands, has his head in his hands, and Blaine Gabbert's putting his arm around him. He's got a tear in his eye. And for that minute, and I just got the chills, for that minute, it just hit me. It's like, you know what? Like, he might be the greatest football player of all time, but at the end of the day, he's a human. He cries just like we do. He has emotions just like we do. Like, granted, like, at the time he had a hot wife, he's making buku bucks, but like, what are these people like off the field? What's going on in their lives? Like, what is that like? And it just hit me. And, as weird as this sounds, and, I didn't do it because obviously I didn't want to get yelled at and fired or banned from the locker room, but like, I just wanted to give him a hug and be like, man, like, everything's going to be all right. Like,
I think it's good to hear.
And I think it just humanized the world we live in. Like, my wife, she's like, oh, I could care less about this athlete or that athlete. They're just a person. And I think, like, we put these athletes on a pedestal and we idolize them. But at the end of the day, like, they're people like we are too. And I think that moment, we found out a week later that, he was getting a divorce. And it was like, that was a really, really, I'll never forget that. Like, and I'll tell that story for a while. And then, I think the other cool thing about, being in the media world is covering track and field. And, I still do that a little bit. I covered track and field for 8 years. And I think it's a sport that doesn't get as much attention as a mainstream sport. And I think being able to see kids at the high school level go to college, go to the pros, win world championships, be there at their signing days, be there when they turn pro, and to be just a part of that journey is really special. I mean, you know, I was there in New York when they went to meets. I was there in Boston when they went to meets. I was there in the Bahamas when, you know, Shawnee Miller was 15 years old before she was a world champion and a gold medalist. Like those memories of being from, you know, backyard meets to, you know, the Florida relays where they're competing at the college level to seeing them sign pro deals at, you know, 16 or out of college or whatever that looks like. That's awesome. And to still have those relationships where I can say, you know, hey, Grant, you know, Holloway, world champion in the hurdles, can we hop on a Zoom next week? Or, you know, hey, Justin Gatlin, let's talk about the upcoming meet you're having. Like, that's pretty cool. And, you know, for them to remember that, you know, hey, Todd and MileSplit and DieStat, those groups were along for the journey. Like, that's just as special as covering professional athletes.
It's Mouse Holloway, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's Gator, big Gator that done incredible things with the track and field program there. It was tough to see Grant fail, not succeed in the Olympics. I'll not call it failure, but not succeed in the Olympics. Give me a bucket list. What's a bucket list event that you have never been to that you look forward to doing or covering or going to someday?
Yeah, I think I would love to cover you know, a world championships, maybe for track and field. And then at the ultimate list, I think I would like to cover an Olympics.
Yeah, I had tickets for the Paris 24 of soccer and basketball. I didn't get track, but I think they're about to go on sale. So I don't even know if I'll be there or not, or what I would do these tickets.
Well, we can make plans, but I think, you know, that's the pinnacle of sport. You know, I've been fortunate enough to see a World Series as a fan, an MLB All-Star game, the World Baseball Classic. I've been to the Super Bowl events. I've covered an NBA All-Star weekend. I've covered an NBA Eastern Conference final. I've gone to hockey games. So I've been really fortunate to cover games and go to games as a fan. But I think the Olympics, you know, just to be surrounded by so many world-class athletes, so many different sports you don't know anything about and sports you know a lot about. You know, that's really cool. And I think, you know, and I know we're coming close to our time, but, you know, I did a series of articles for Orlando Magazine on Olympic hopefuls. And I interviewed, you know, Caroline Marks, who's one of the top female surfers in the world. You know, I emailed a girls soccer player from Montverde. I interviewed, not emailed, one of the top Taekwondo girls, you know, a wrestler who was going to wrestle for Puerto Rico. Like, there's so many cool stories that come out of the Olympics.
Yeah, agreed. And then some people take it, you know, they take for granted that they made the Olympics and they say, I don't want to go again. Or you could say, hey, let a younger person do, which is still good. We're going to let you out of the Wolff Den with the same question everyone gets. You got 24 hours to spend with anybody in the world. They have to be alive and you can't be related to them. Who would you choose and what would you guys do?
Wow. That's a really good question. Yeah, I haven't thought about
sports. It could be famous.
I don't know. That's hard. I think, you know, I never really grew up, you know, idolizing anybody per se in the athletic space. You know,
it doesn't have to be like people could say, I want to meet with Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. It just could be someone you think would be cool to hang out with. It doesn't have to be an idol. Just,
yeah, you know, I think, you know, to hang out with for, you know, a day or an extended period of time, you know, I think Gary V. Yeah, I actually, you know, talked to him for about 2 minutes at the Super Bowl in Miami. At Ray Lewis's event, I talked to him for about 2 minutes in Radio Row.
I got him for 1 minute. What question would you ask Gary V if you can ask anything?
Yeah, I think, you know, man, I
reach out to Gary because he's not the first. I'd like to have him on here. We got an interview for 1 minute at Radio Row, which was great. but I think it'd be a good conversation because I do agree with a lot of what he does and says, and also I'm on the other side of a lot of what he says. So I think it
I
would
think
be
maybe the question I would give him is, what gets him fired up every day? And I think I'm a big passion person, and I just love his positivity and his passion. And that was kind of what I mentioned to him was like, hey, I feel like when you're texting and you send those texts to everybody, like they speak to me. And he's, you know,
I have a different opinion of that, but I get it.
Right. And you and I have discussed that, but I think like, just his passion, his encouragement, his positivity, like, and what he's doing in the marketing and creative space, I think there's a wealth of knowledge that you could learn. And you want to surround yourself with good, positive people. So I would say,
I agree.
just off the cusp, and I had to pick tomorrow because they're coming to town. And I would say Gary.
Gary V's a good choice. We're tallying up to all the people. I'm pretty sure he's been said before, which is good, not a bad thing. Great to chat with you. Follow Todd and reach out to him on LinkedIn if you have any questions about anything we discussed or anything PR, marketing related. We're going to give another plug to partspass.app and saki.com since those are the people you're working with right now, and really appreciate the time and looking forward to seeing you at an event soon. And that's it. Stay tuned. We got some more Wolff Den next week.
Thanks for having me, Matt. Really enjoyed it. And like you said, you follow me on LinkedIn. Anybody has any questions or wants to reach out, more than happy to chat, and love building relationships, meeting new people, and love what you're doing as well, Matt. Keep up the great work.
Appreciate it. Everyone have a great night, and do something fun, do something good, and we'll talk to you soon.